verse 8, it says, Vayas et hakiyor nechoshet vet kano nechoshet b'marot hatzavot asher tzavu petach ol moed. And Betzal made the basin out of copper and the pedestal out of copper with the marot hatzavot asher tzavu petach ol moed that they made at the they gather at the tent. So what does it mean? So Rashi says that rather than say, Rashi says this means, rather than saying it was the marot of the tzovot, well, I just have to say, because I just have to read the Rashi. Benot Yisrael hayu biyadon marot. Rashi says marot are mirrors. The Jewish girls had mirrors in their hands. Shemorot bahen kashein mitkashot. They used to look at these mirrors when they were making themselves look beautiful. How did they? What did they use for mirrors back then, Moshe?
Like a pan or something.
Exactly, Moshe, precisely. They used like a copper pan. They scrubbed it real well, and that was their mirror. So they said, I want to bring our mirrors. These women said, we want to bring our mirrors to the temple. Come on in, Akiva, we're answering your question from yesterday. You said, were they nuns?
Oh, we're still nuns.
The Jewish women.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to answer that today. So they said, we're going to bring the chapter 38, verse 8. Elon, let's go. Chapter 38, verse 8. So they said, we're going to bring our mirrors. Moshe rejected them. Said, I don't want these pans. I don't want these mirrors because they've used them for the Yetzer Hara. I don't want these pans because they use them for the evil inclination. How? How did they use them for the evil inclination? Because you'll see that the women use them. What's the problem?
Oh, am I on the wrong page? 516.
You're in the wrong page because you're in Genesis, guy. You have to go to Exodus, the book of Exodus. So it's chapter 38, verse 8 in the book of Exodus.
I'm at 516.
516. Kobe, come sit there. You're too far away. I can't see without my glasses. I can't see you so far away. Yeah. Page 516. So Moshe said, I don't want to take their mirrors because their mirrors were being used. You'll see why. They were being used to make themselves look pretty for their husbands. So Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Kabel. Hashem said to Moshe, accept the mirrors. This is the most precious gift to me of all. What? Why? Because they, through these mirrors, the women established many tzivaot, the mirrors that established tzivaot. Through these mirrors, they established many legions in Egypt. Why? Because their husbands were enslaved. Their husbands were enslaved, working so hard. And what would the women do? These women went out and they brought for them food and drink. While their husbands were in the fields working hard, the women brought them out food and drink and were feeding them. And they took their mirrors. Each woman was looking at herself in the mirror. And she flirted with him. She flirted with her husband. She said, look how pretty I am. I'm prettier than you. And we told they inspired their husbands, they excited them. And they had relations. And they conceived and gave birth there. Can you imagine what kind of activism, spiritual strength it took to say we're going to have a child in Egypt in slavery, where the boys are being killed, where they're throwing the boys into the Nile River, and they say, no, we're going to have a child. It's like having a child in Auschwitz. It's like saying I want to get pregnant in Auschwitz. And there were cases of children being born in concentration camps. I don't know about Auschwitz, but I think in Bergen-Belsen, there were a couple of cases, very rare cases, of children being born. But can you imagine a child being conceived under those circumstances? What kind of incredible spiritual strength and that's what these women were doing. And that's what it means. Underneath the apple tree, I inspire you. And that's why there's a custom to put apples into the charoses, because it reminds us of this moment. And then it says, hold on 1 second. So then it says, that's why it says with the mirrors of those who congregated, meaning to say, it's not the mirrors of those who congregated, the mirrors that made the tzavos, that made the legions. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, I want those. Hashem said to Moshe, I want those mirrors. What are we going to do with those mirrors? Nasa kiyor mehem. We're going to make a basin from them. What's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of this basin? The purpose of this basin was filled with water. Really, it was filled with water to purify every day the Kohanim before they served. But it was also to take the water from there and use it as part of the sota. If a woman was accused of being adulterous, they would take the water from there and test her. And they would make peace. It would be allow the woman to return to her husband. To give the water from there to somebody whose husband had warned her. Vinister, and then she became secluded. That's called a sota woman. And I'll prove it to you. Shehein maros mamash. I'll prove to you it's an actual mirror, because it says, and Rashi proves because it says kikar. That it says the copper of the offering was 70 kikar. And it doesn't mention the kior and the kano. So that proves that was not offered as part of it. And then Rashi proves, Unclos translates it as b'mechzas neshaya, the mirrors of women, and this is mechzaya neshaya is the translation of mirrors, and in Old French Rashi says mirrors, and also it says in Targum Yonasan Hagel Yonim mitargaminim mechzayasa. Okay, so that's what it is. And so we see from here, so just to summarize, what did Rashi say? Rashi says, what is Marot HaTzovot? It represents the women who made the gatherings of men. What happened? These women tried to bring their copper mirrors, and Moshe didn't want to take it. He says this was used for like making yourself look pretty. I don't want it. And Hashem says to Moshe, it's the most beautiful thing, because the women use this to inspire their husbands to have children in the darkest days of slavery. And we're going to use the same copper mirrors to make a basin, which eventually not only will purify the Kohen every day, but will allow a husband and wife to reunite after the husband's accused her of being sinful with another man by testing her with these waters. So that's what Rashi says. The mirrors was to bring a husband and wife back together. But we're going to get to what Akiva asked in a second. But for Greg, you had a question? Oh, okay. So, according to this approach, Elon, what are we saying? That Hashem was saying that the holiest thing of all is when the husband and wife are together. So, but Akiva said, were there nuns in the Jewish tradition? Were there nuns? So listen to what. So this was Rashi. Well, I always loved the Baal HaTurim. Who's the Baal HaTurim? Baal HaTurim lived 1270 to 1340, started out in Germany and then moved to Castile, Spain. Anybody here ever been to Spain? It's right near Rwanda. Probably you get from Spain, you cross over the sea there. What's the sea between Spain and Africa? What's that sea?
Rwanda's the top.
Rwanda's in Africa.
Yeah, but it's not like near Spain.
Morocco's near. I think Morocco's right next to Spain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Morocco. It's Morocco. How far are you from Morocco, guy?
4 hours, like 9 hours.
Driving?
It's easier to get to Israel than Morocco, I think.
Yeah. You can't drive it.
Oh,
Okay, fine. Oh, it's a 9-hour plane ride.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, fine. Listen to what the Baal HaTurim says. Listen to what the Baal HaTurim says. The Baal HaTurim says like this. Baal HaTurim says like this. Marot He says, first of all, totally different approach, the opposite approach. He says the marot, he says, Daled b'masoret. The word marot appears 4 times in the Bible. There's marot etzavot, and then it says, Vayomer Elokim liYisrael b'marot halayla. God spoke to Jacob, Israel, in a vision in the night, and then twice in Ezekiel it says b'marot Elokim. Twice in Ezekiel is the visions of God. So the word marot talks about a spiritual vision. And now here's what the Baal HaTurim says. This is for you, Akiva. That's why I'm talking. That's why I'm deviating from the Rashi. We always only study Rashi here is during this time. But Akiva asked the question. So, Elu Anashim, what does he say? These women, Sarumi Tavas Olam. These women decided they didn't want to be involved in the physical pleasures of the world. V'nasnu Marianu in Devasa Mishkan. And they said, we want to take our mirrors and give them to God. Like a girl who goes to the seminary in Israel and comes back and says, no more pants for me. No more short skirts. Everything is, I'm giving away all my makeup. That's what these women did. They said, I'm giving away my mirrors. We're giving it away to the Mishkan because we had a vision. They had this prophetic vision at that point, says the Baal HaTurim. Understand what's going on here. The Baal HaTurim says these are women who said, no more mirrors for us because we are now going to be holy women. We're engaging in prophecy. They had the prophecy. That's what the Baal HaTurim says. They had the Ruach Elokim. All of a sudden we see a different approach. This is not the idea that the holiest thing is for husband and wife to be together. It's just the opposite. This is the idea that we have this class of women who were saying, we're going to be prophetesses, we're going to be holy women, almost like Akiva was asking, like a monastic group of women who were secluded from society to become spiritually pure and to get the divine prophecy by giving away all the things that make them beautiful. That's the Baal HaTurim's approach. Totally opposite of Rashi. And yeah, in the Christian world, you might call these women nuns, Akiva. In the Christian world, and this is, now, I want to say one other thing. While this is raging, Rashi might have taken his approach because the whole idea of celibacy in the Christian church, in the Latin Christendom, whether the priest was supposed to be celibate, that was around the time of Rashi. They were arguing that the priests have to be celibate, and they didn't allow it. But Rashi's saying that's not the Jewish way. That's not the Jewish way. But the Baal HaTurim maybe had a different approach. But anyway.
I don't know why it can't be both.
I was just gonna say.
If the original approach is what you're saying, that these women in Mitzrayim did this and they got their husbands to procreate. Now we're in the Mishkan, maybe they're older and they've decided to sort of give themselves their children, or, I don't know what the time difference would have been, but they're in a place where they don't want to do that. I don't know. It's too short a time frame for that to happen?
No, you're not wrong that the approaches are not necessarily contradictory. It's theoretically possible that it could be both, but really, to my mind, the Baal HaTurim and Rashi are taking 2 different approaches. That Baal HaTurim is saying that these women achieved holiness by giving away their mirrors so that they could, swear off this type of physicality in the world. Whereas Rashi says, no, these women were giving away the mirrors that helped them become closer to their husband as an offering of, we're giving a part of ourselves.
For sure. They're not, if you look at them, they're different, heading out, going in different directions.
Not
also sort of feels that they're more of the Baal HaTurim's explanation.
What does he say? Let me hear.
That's women who permanently stationed, dedicating themselves to holiness, always found, where, and these were the people that didn't move. They were just like sort of people that you would see at the Kotel that would say Tehillim all the time.
Right.
That's who they were.
Exactly. Like the holy women, almost like what we might, if they lived together as a group. So now we have an idea of a vision of a group of women who gathered around the
How is that holy though if they're supposed to have kids? It's one of the mitzvahs.
well,
You're seeing. Why is your thing saying that it doesn't say anything about them not ever having kids? Why do we have to assume they're celibate?
It does. We don't have to assume they're celibate, but what I'm saying is they gave away their physicality in order to achieve prophecy.
Like a Nazir.
Yeah, almost. Well, a Nazir doesn't say anything about giving away his. Right. But it seems they took upon themselves they self-flagellation as denying physicality. And once you're going to deny physical pleasure, it's it's a very short step to say, let's talk about pleasurable activities and start listing things and to go there. And so he's never that explicit, but the implication is there.
It's also not inconsistent with Moshe feeling that after Mount Har Sinai, he had to separate from his wife.
Exactly, very right. Thera is precisely correct that Moshe Rabbeinu separated from, at least according to Rashi. Rashi's explanation is that Moshe separated from his wife, and that's why Aaron and Miriam were upset at him. But okay, so now let's continue with the Rashi. We have time for Asher Tzavu, they gathered, Rashi says, Lahavi Nidvasan, to bring their contribution. And then it states, Umat, okay, the next verse is, it states in chapter 38, verse 18, Masach Shara Chatzer, and there was a screen at the gate of the courtyard, Masero came, the work of an embroiderer, Techelet Vargaman v'Torat Shani v'Sheish Masar, it's purple and turquoise and purple and crimson and linen twisted. 20 amos was its length, the koma and its height, Berochav Chamesh Amot Lumat Kalei Chatzer, corresponding to the curtains of the courtyard. Rashi says here, Kimidas Kalei Chatzer, corresponding to the measure of the height of the courtyard curtains. Okay, Lumat usually means opposite. So Rashi saying here that doesn't mean that because it wasn't opposite. Rather, it means corresponding to the measure. Okay, so now we have done something that I don't think in all my years in Yeshiva selling Melech, thank God Hashem for this opportunity, we've ever finished all the Rashis in one parsha. But so that leads tomorrow, we'll do the Haftorah. Now it's a special Haftorah because it's not the Haftorah for Vayakhel, it is the Haftorah for, what's it the Haftorah for? Actually, right, you're right. Usually when Rosh Chodesh is the next day, we read, right, usually when Rosh Chodesh is the next day, we read Haftorah from Machar Chodesh, but this week is a special reading because it's Parasha Shkolim, so this is the Haftorah for Shkolim, which comes from, there's a whole question, where does it come from? So it comes from the second book of Kings, chapter 11, verse 17 is where the Sephardic begin it from, but the Ashkenaz begin it from chapter 12, which is the story of Yoash. So we'll read that tomorrow. There's the Haftorah. Okay, everybody, shkoyach, it's time to daven Shachris now. I mean, not Shachris. I don't know what, it's a wonderful day. Time to daven.
You're a real chassid, right?
Shkoyach. Anyway.